I'm Pam Evanson.
I'm Dan Lappin, and this is Breaking Sales, a nonconformist take on rejecting the sales status quo. Join the Lappin180 team as we break the tried and died sales tactics and techniques that are failing you and your prospects.
Going back to the stubborn element, I think it's always a good reminder when we catch ourselves or we call each other out on it, because that's what we're also asking others to do with us. That, you know, we got to be able to take it ourselves, and we've got to be able to understand when we need to see a different perspective, when we need to look at something from a different lens, when we need to take some tough feedback, because that's what we're doing for all the people that we work with. So shame on us if we're not doing it for ourselves.
Absolutely.
I was trying to think, what's the toughest feedback I've ever gotten?
I know
I've
mine.
gotten a lot. I remember this really tough one though. This might be like 25 to 30 years ago. Young pup selling, just cold call machine, and it was actually, believe it or not, when voicemail was just invented. That's how long ago it was, early 90s.
We're ancient.
I'm ancient.
Dan is.
I am. And I remember I set up this really big appointment with this huge law firm, and I was taking the owner in, who was the inventor and the founder of the company. And I was so proud of the appointment because, you know, there's like 750 attorneys, and I figured in my head they all needed this technology, right? I was already cashing the check. And so I brought the owner in. His name was Walter, and great guy. And we get in there, and the managing partner was in this giant desk, and Walter and I were on the other side of it. And I just started pitching, like, why I thought all his attorneys needed the voicemail technology. And I started talking about the features and how all the features would align with how, you know, a lawyer or attorney operates during the day and all this kind of stuff. And like half an hour went by, and the managing partner was like, great, thank you, this was good. You know, give me a couple weeks to think about this, and, you know, we'll get back to you. You know, we left the office, and Walter hadn't said a word. And I'm like thinking, oh man, I was a superstar, and I nailed it. We get to
He's going to think about it.
yeah. And I remember it was raining too, and I remember we got to the parking lot and it was raining, and he just looks at me and he's like, what was that? I go, what are you talking about? And he was a really nice guy, but he was like real serious. And I'm like, he just said, that was the worst meeting, conversation, discussion, whatever you want to call it, I've ever been a part of in my entire life. And he goes, if I was you, I would rethink how you're doing things. I would rethink your approach. And he said, look, I like you, but don't ever bring me to a meeting like that again. That was awful. And I just remember sitting there like, oh my gosh, there was like a little crack in the pavement, and I wanted to crawl into that crack.
It's when you're talking through that story, I think of Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
With the train scene.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I picture in my head. You were Tommy Boy.
Yes. Yeah. But that was really hard feedback, because I wanted to impress Walter, and I wanted to do a really good job, and my ego wanted to make sure I was going to land this big deal and all of that, and I just completely blew it from beginning to end. Blew it. Yeah. So I didn't ask a single question in that entire meeting. How about you guys?
Mine is feedback you gave me,
Okay.
which was toughest but
I'm a little nervous here.
best feedback.
Too. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So it just really speaks, I think, to the growth of our relationship. But I remember clear as day, it was Chicago, where we did an event together. This was years ago, probably within my first 1 to 2 years with you. And you had given me the floor on a lot of the event, and we're driving back, and you're asking me how you feel that I did in the event. And I said, I think it went well. I think I worked on these things that you've been sharing with me, and I'm going off on all the positives that I just think I did the best job ever. And straight-faced Dan, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. Then, to your credit, are you open to some feedback? So you asked my permission. I did say yes. I received it, and it was very tough to hear that. But the best feedback that you said is, I'm not seeing your authentic, genuine, true self when you're coaching. That you felt I was scripted or robotic, and that you knew me as a certain personality and person and authenticity, and it wasn't showing up in my coaching. And it was the best feedback I've ever received. Toughest feedback, because I thought it was the opposite of what you were telling me. But it was reality. And when I went back and I watched the video, because we had video, I could absolutely see what you were talking about. And so I owe you that. I do feel that I've now my authentic, true self in my coaching. And it's not only fulfilling for me, but I think it's helping me be a better coach. So thank
really
you
good.
for the feedback.
You're welcome, and we're past it, right?
We are past it. I wouldn't have come back if I wasn't past it.
Just making sure.
That's too funny.
I'll just bring it up when I need to.
That's right.
When I need to use it for my benefit.
That's right.
I don't need to win on this one.
How about you, Pam?
Mine's Dan too. But I like my example because I was 43 years old when I started working for Dan. And I was self-proclaimed pretty good at my job. I mean, I think I several times reminded Dan that I was doing a very good job at the company I was working for. So if you want to talk about somebody who came into Lappin180 with an inflated ego, that was absolutely me. I mean, I felt like I was at the top of my game and like, okay, this guy, like I can handle this job, like no problem. We were 6 months in and we were at our old building. You had gotten one of the conference rooms and you brought Al with you. And that made me a little nervous that Al, one of Dan's board members, founding board members and consultant advisor to Dan, came to the meeting. And same thing. Dan said, why don't you tell me how you feel your first 6 months at Lappin have been? And I'm like, I've put this together. I've done this. I've done this. You know, the big joke, I've been locked in a closet trying to figure out our cold calling cadence that we're going to be coaching everybody. I mean, I am patting myself on the back left and right. And Dan said, I couldn't be more disappointed in how the first 6 months have gone. And I went, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. And I thought, okay. And remember, Al was there. And he said, okay, Dan, why don't you write, we had a whiteboard in the room. He said, why don't you write your thoughts as to what you were expecting? Why don't we start there? And it was so humbling for me to understand that I still had a long, long way to go. And I think if you had glossed over that, I guarantee you I would not have found another gear. I thought I was doing pretty freaking good. And it was good. It was very, very good. And I think at 43 to receive that type of feedback is exceptional. And I think sometimes we hesitate as we advance in our careers to give people feedback like that. And I'm really glad that I got it.
Or receive it. I think we also are very hesitant to receive it.
I cannot imagine today, though, ever saying to you or anybody that I'm very disappointed.
Well, it was the truth, though. It was the truth.
It might have been the past 10 years of parenting where you just learn you don't ever say that. So
Needed to hear it. I needed to hear that.
I probably could have communicated a lot better to you, though.
No, I disagree with you, Dan. I absolutely disagree.
Yeah, because I can't imagine saying that to, like I said, you two or anybody else at this point.
I think you know Pam well enough, though, that sometimes she needs to hear it in the hardest version for her to actually hear it.
I do.
Yeah.
You know that about me. I need to hear things like that. It was really good. Game changer for me, without a doubt. Found a new gear.
Still feel bad now. Thanks for listening to Breaking Sales. If you want to get engaged with us outside of the podcast, be sure to go to our website, lappin180.com. Go to Contact Us. You can also engage with us on LinkedIn at Dan Lappin or Lappin180.